Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they war. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower class and social slide, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See their shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, that's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, 'cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to Game On. This is your host, Ron Stevens, and it's the 22nd of October, and I'm still fighting this stupid cold. My wife's had it for a month now. This is nasty. And I don't know why we got it, but we got it, and it's hanging on to us. But anyways, that's beside the point. The show must go on, I guess. Just to get this going, I want to talk real quick about the word amoral. And I'm pretty sure that's what's causing us most of the trouble. Amoral is not immoral or moral. It's no moral. It's amoral. And that seems to be what our rule of law is based on. And I still believe that's what the villagers way back in the 1200s figured out. They were probably smarter than us, because they're trying to figure out what was going on. Why were they being tied down? Why were they having these stupid rules and regulations dumped upon them and that? And they pinpointed the lawyers and the bankers basically, but the lawyers in particular, and law, not law, but legal is the world of the amoral, and those are the rules and regulations that we live under. Then they're amoral. If you've ever had a cop bothering at you and you try to make some sense with the guy or the gal who was wearing a uniform, and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with them, or basically any bureaucrat, anything to do whatsoever with government. Well, that's just our policy. I'm not here to decide on whether it's moral or not. It's just our policy, and we have to follow the policy. Well, who wrote up the policy? The lawyers. And what they used to write it, legalese, based on assumptions and ambiguity, and we just have to follow this stuff. It has no basis in morality whatsoever because it's amoral. And that's the problem we got. That's the whole problem we got. Because our so-called governments, which are not, they're corporations, are amoral. And when a normal man or woman will basically use moral logic, or try to use moral logic with these police, lawyers, judges, bureaucrats, and it's like they can't hear you. Well, they can't hear you because they're in the realm of amoral, which is the same as legal and law. Moral and amoral are like oil and water. You can't mix them. So is legal and law. You can't mix the two. They're not mixable. You can stir them up, but they're going to separate awful fast. And I think that is our major problem. Now, if you just look up amorality is an absence of indifference towards or disregard for morality is what it is. If you look under legal entities, which you are, okay, you live as a legal entity. Okay, that's what they registered you as, a legal entity, which is a corporate entity. And it says here, some people consider corporations to be intrinsically amoral entities, which they are. And all of these laws are written for the benefit of this amoral entity, which is the corporation, which is your so-called government. And somewhere down in here, it says that amoral people. How can someone be amoral? How can a living, breathing man be amoral? Because an amoral thing is like a rock or a chair. It's a non-living entity. Well, the corporation is a non-living entity. The legal system is a non-living entity, like a rock. So, I've been in front of judges and I've talked to lawyers and talked to police in the past. And more than once I said, I might as well talk to a freaking rock as try to talk to you. And I didn't realize how right I was. I was absolutely right. And I think this is the problem that we've run into. Now, Michael Schmidt, and I've mentioned him before, he's the raw milk farmer here who's been fighting for 20 plus years and trying to make sense out of what's going on. But anyways, on Monday night, they picked Monday night at 7 o'clock when the police station / jail was closed for him to come and get fingerprinted for something that they are the ones that broke the law. The bureaucrats are the ones that broke the law because they put up cameras on his farm to spy on them. Now, that should be against the law. If I come and spy on you at your home, I'm going to get a ticket. But Michael and someone else found one of the cameras first and alerted Michael, and then he went out and found the other camera and said that he phoned the police and said he'd give them back to whoever owned them if they would come and claim them and, of course, identify them. That was way back in July, and nobody made a claim on them. Police say they weren't involved in it. The municipal council backed up the claim of the police. So they were sitting on these cameras since July. October the 3rd, they raided the farm again. And that's when they fessed up that it was the Ministry of Natural Resources that actually planted the cameras there, of which he didn't have in his possession at the time because they were with one of the lawyers. And so immediately after, and they would not have charged him for the charges they laid on him if the people hadn't forced a stand down, and the police and the agents ended up having to unload the truck they'd loaded with goods that didn't belong to the police or the agents, and had to unload the truck and give it back to the people that actually owned it, and left empty-handed. And I just piss them off. So as soon as that was done, and they left empty-handed, they turned around and charged Michael for stealing these cameras. Well, he didn't steal them. He was looking to find out who owned them, because they found them and was more than willing to give them back to who owned them. But they were a little pissy, so they charged him with theft under $5,000 and mischief. So, anyways, he ended up having to go Monday night to the police station in Durham after it was closed. And I want to take my hat off to all the people that showed up, because that's a screwball time. I mean, it's Monday night of the election, 7 o'clock. That means people would have had to leave their homes by 5:30, 5:45 to get there to meet up for the walk to the police station, because they would have been walking by 6:30. And so it was very inconvenient for people. But they showed up, 150 of them, and they walked up the main street, shut the main street down, went to the police station, and had a rally out front of the police station. And then Michael went up to the door with his wife and a lawyer, and one of the cops come out and give Michael's wife a shove away from the door, and grab hold of Michael to drag him in. And then the lawyer said he wanted to come in, and they said, like, who are you? He said, I'm the lawyer. And the cops go, you got a bar card on you? And he says, no, but you can look it up on the phone. You know, it's easy to find out who I am. Well, you ain't coming in either. So, you know, this is a classic case of amoral. And because if it was moral, you see, I'm a firm believer that regardless of what the problem is, perceived or otherwise, that we, two reasonable men, or a group of reasonable men and women, can always come to some sort of a conclusion that is acceptable to the parties involved. Well, you can't do that in an amoral system, because you're talking to a rock. Now, I was talking to Michael about what happened in the jail or police station last night. And there's some people, he put a bunch of pictures up on his Facebook, which is just Michael Schmidt. He put, I don't know, there's about 50 pictures up there of the walk and that. But there's one particular picture of the two cops. Somebody had shot a picture through the window of the police station in the entry to the thing. And, you know, if these guys got an IQ of 60, these two cops, I mean, you just look in their eyes and their faces, and these guys are just dumber than, well, a box of rocks. And that's who they want as police, okay? They want people who are basically amoral in order to uphold the amoral rules and regulations. Now they say, well, people are intrinsically moral. But then if you look down and you look through it, you find that who could possibly, what kind of a man or woman could be classed as amoral if morality is intrinsic in men? They mention psychopaths, sociopaths. as to being amoral. Okay? And that's what's running our lands. That's who's writing the laws. Okay? Now they must be psychopaths, because a moral man couldn't go and drop bombs on innocent people. They couldn't do it. But they said, well, I'm just following orders. And that's what the cops do. I'm just following orders. Well, those orders are amoral. Those are orders coming from and the rules and regulations of a amoral corporation. And then they say, well, I'm just doing my job. Yes, but your job is not moral, and you're hurting people. So I don't know how people separate themselves from this moral, amoral thing. They're supposed to be moral men, yet they do the bidding of an amoral corporation. And that's what it says. It says also down here, the suspension suspension of morality. At times, human beings willingly suspend consideration of moral values, although in a limited domain. For instance, a lawyer may choose to be amoral with regard to his client in order to avoid judging his client's guilt or innocence before the trial is complete. This is different from a complete rejection of morality if the lawyer continues to abide by moral laws and task into account and take into account moral consideration when he's out of the courtroom. Well, my thought process on that is that there's no time. This idea that you can slip in and out of morality to suit the situation, that doesn't fly. Not in my books. Doesn't fly at all. And that's the problem we're having. We've been trying to come to grips with what's going on here, and we try to look at through a moral set of eyes or a sense of morality. And when you see a cop beating up a child or an old lady, or shooting somebody standing there who's under duress because of a medical problem or whatever, and they just up and blast away at this guy and kill his ass. That is what a psychopath would do, not a moral man. A moral man would be concerned why the guy's under duress, what his problem is. Could you please put down your butter knife? Okay, because you may hurt yourself, because you sure as hell ain't going to hurt me with it. And to show some compassion. But you see, the police can't, really, the police don't have any authority over the man or woman. Okay, they're separate. They only have power, as does the court. The court has no power over a man or a woman. They're not even recognized. They can't recognize them. They can only recognize the amoral legal entity. And that's what you got partnered with when you were registered at birth. Okay, so you consider yourself moral, but because you're tagged to that legal entity, they see you as amoral. They see you as a thing. Okay, that's why you're referred to as a human resource, like a rock or a piece of timber. Anyways, amoral is as being neither moral or immoral, specifically lying outside the sphere to which moral judgments apply. Science as such, okay? Science as such is completely amoral. Now, this nonsense that they're firing off at us about global warming and yada, 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 or you take vaccines, or you take geoengineering / chemtrails, okay? No moral man would jam this crap into another moral man's arm. But then science is amoral. And that's unfortunate. So we live, they call it a secular world, but really what it is, it's an amoral world. Now you, the man, woman, are intrinsically moral. But your legal entity is amoral. And all of the laws, the so-called laws, the corporate bylaws of the state or federal governments is amoral. And that's where we get trapped. And that's why when, somebody is obviously beat up when they shouldn't have been, or harmed terribly, or thrown out of their home, or whatever, that is morally wrong, they can justify it because they don't operate in the moral realm. They operate in the world of the amoral. And that's why we see what we see going on all the time. And I think that's one thing that people really got to wrap their minds around. That's what we got to do. That's what we really got to do. They say you broke the law. It's not a law. If it was a law, it would be based on something moral. And that's where you get back to the law, is if you haven't harmed someone, then you didn't create a victim, and therefore it's impossible that you broke a law. Because without a victim, you can't have a law broken. So most of what people get fined for in that is not morally based. It's about collecting your money. It's about stealing from you under the guise that you broke some law. And that's barbaric. Okay? You, the man, you, the woman, are basically just, human resource or a slave of the state. And that's too freaking bad. That's really too bad. It's sickening, actually. But like I said, all we can really do is keep talking, teaching, and shining the light. Because the more we shine the light, the more people understand what moral is. Because amoral lives in the darkness and the shadows. Moral lives in the light. And we got to get back into the light. And we got to drag all this amoral crap into the light. Because it won't hold any power in the light. And we got to shine the light on it. Because if we don't, what's been happening is just going to continue to accelerate. And the rights you thought you had are going to continue to disappear. And one of those things is community policing. Community policing is global policing at the community level. And it's all propaganda again, you know. Well, you're not a good community member because, well, you think differently. So it's to get everybody into a singular herd mentality. You know, just like a bunch of cattle when they run you through the chute to brand you. Oh, that sounds like running through the chute to vaccine you, doesn't it? Hit you with the vaccines, hit you with the brand. You know, I saw something go by today. Somebody was worried, what do I do if my employer demands that I have a vaccination because of an employment policy? Now, an employment policy is a corporate policy, corporate bylaw, will, and the corporation can theoretically make whatever bylaws it wants. It's its company, you know. And the question was, well, if my employer demands that I get a vaccine or have a record of vaccinations up to date, or I lose my job, what should I do? Because I really don't want to take the vaccination. Well, you just answered your own question. But then goes on to say, but if I have to take it, you know, I hope for the best. Wait a minute here. Wait a minute here. You don't want to take it. You're being threatened with your employment. So while you don't want to take it, you're saying you're willing to take it because you need your job. Nobody needs their job that bad, ever. If you're going to bow down to that, then you will bow down to anything. And that's what I'm talking about. As they continue to tie us down with this community nonsense, that we must subject ourselves to the rules of the community, or we're not part of the community, and therefore we, I guess, like Bush would say, you're either with us or you're against us. You're going to get hurt. So submit. And that's what this is all about. But all of that is amoral. A moral man would never ask another man to submit, because that's not moral. Moral is live your life. Okay, don't harm anybody, because if you harm someone and you create a victim, then obviously you've broken the moral law, and therefore you should expect to pay restitution to whoever or whatever you harmed. That makes perfect sense. Now, in a perfect world, or in a moral world, and I've said this how many times, I mean, if I throw a rock through your window and somebody sees me throw a rock through your window, well, it's pretty cut and dried. I broke your window. I owe you restitution for that broken window. I can either pay someone to come and replace your window, or I can do it myself. But my obligation as a moral man is to fix the damage I caused. In an amoral system, I break your window, I get dragged to court, and I get fined for breaking your window, of which I pay the court. You still have a broken window. But then you have amoral insurance, another great scam laid upon the people to fix your window. So, you know, we got to chuck this amoral nonsense off our backs, because all it is a chain of slavery. Because, see, when you're a slave, You're not looked at as a man and woman. You are like a rock or a chair or a tree or a resource, okay, to be used and abused any way that the owner of that slave really wishes. Because you're not looked at as a man or a woman. You're looked at as a owned property. And that's what we are. We're property of the state. And we were registered and became amoral corporate entities. And that is what the law is that comes out of the legislature. It is amoral. You cannot, I don't know how many people listening have ever tried to reason with a bureaucrat. It's almost comical. You can reason with a moral man. You can't reason with an amoral corporate policy. You can't reason with that. Because it's dead. You might as well talk to that rock. You probably get a better response. Because it really ticks me off the way I see people being hurt all the time, and the police are getting just raggedy ass crazy because they know they can get away with it. Because who polices the police? The police. Who charges the police if they do something egregious? The police. So that's why you see in so many instances a policeman does something totally egregious and gets put on, we're going to do an internal investigation because we police ourselves. And then gets desk duty or something with full pay and benefits, doesn't get fired, doesn't get reprimanded. He just goes off the street for a little while until things settle down and there's some news stories, that people are attached to, and then that guy goes back out on the street. Free to do the same thing that he was pulled in by the police for an internal investigation in the first place. Happens over and over and over again. Like when I had the Special Investigations Unit here for another thing, and they're the ones that are supposed to investigate the police, but only, the realm of what they can investigate is so small, it's ridiculous. If a cop, this is what they told me. I said, what is it you can really try to force the police to? And they really, in the end, can't force it because, again, they don't have any authority. It sounds like they have authority, but they don't have authority. They can't force the police to charge an officer for anything. Doesn't matter what it is. But every now and again, when something is so egregious and outrageous that the police, to save face, will go ahead and charge an officer. So, anyways, the SIU says, well, this is what we can investigate. It's only what they can investigate. If a policeman tears limbs off your body, now that doesn't happen that often that I'm aware of, so that's not something that the SIU is going to have much to say about too often. If a policeman burns someone to the major part of their body, then we can investigate that. Well, I haven't heard too many stories of that either, where the police are burning people to the greater part of their body. And then the other things that they're allowed to investigate is if a policeman shoots somebody, which seems to be happening with more regularity all the time, and rape. But they've narrowed down the meaning of rape to such a narrow band that that doesn't get investigated too often either. because when I had the SEIU here, I read the definition of rape to them from etymology, which is the origins of the words in that. And I read them the meaning of rape. And then on my way back from the computer back to the kitchen where the two SIU officers were sitting, I had to go to get to my chair. I had to go behind the male SIU investigator. He was a big lad, you know, long leather coat on, and he's a big man. And couldn't help myself. I got in behind him there, and I thought, what the hell? So I come down on him pretty hard and grabbed him by his shoulders and just yanked him in his chair backwards to make a point. And I said, there, you just been raped, according to the definition of rape. Now, I didn't know how he was going to take that, but he seemed like a rather amiable guy. Both of them did. The woman was very nice as well. And wasn't sure how this was going to go over, but what the hell. Got to make your point somehow. And, you know, he immediately fired up the recorders again. He thought it was very important that he describe rape according to the definition of rape and the action of me performing that definition. So he was very good about that. He didn't get ugly about it at all. He thought this was good. Because as both the officers or the investigators said, they have very little use for the Ontario Provincial Police because of what they know they're up to. They see it all the day. They get complaints called in constantly. But they can't do anything about it. They don't have the power to do anything about it. So, you know, the media fires up this nonsense that, well, the SIU is investigating. Like the SIU has any power to do anything. They don't. So we have the media, which is corporate, right? Protecting the police, which are corporate. You know, I have never read anything in any media here saying that the police police themselves or that the police are actually employees of the Queen. I never read any of that stuff. So the media is covering, and in a couple of stories that came out on Michael Schmidt when he was forced to go to the police station. And here's a funny part of the conversation we had last night. He was talking about, excuse me, he was talking about what happened when, and I'd said this on Tuesday. No, I didn't say this part, I don't think, on Tuesday night. We went over some of this stuff on Tuesday night. But, you know, why did you not allow them, this was talking to Michael last night, why didn't you just let them take your damn prints and get out of there? And he said, well, you know, we gotta push this as much as we can. And you see, here anyways, the only time you need to be fingerprinted is if it's an indictable offense. And if it's just a summary conviction, there's no need for fingerprints. So the only one that can decide whether or not is whether or not it is a indictable is the Crown Attorney. So Michael was just basically trying to explain these two blockheads that you know, it says right here in the Act that it has to be determined whether it's indictable or summary. And we have so many things here, and I'm sure it's the same elsewhere, where it's at the discretion of the Crown as to whether to bring it forward as an indictable or summary. So he's just asking them some realistic questions. You know, is this indictable or is it summary? And again, only the Crown Attorney can determine that. Not you, the policeman. So if you could be so kind as get somebody down here, get somebody on the horn, to find out what this is, indictable or summary, which it doesn't say, then if it's indictable, then I will give you the prints. But till we find out that, I have it's not necessary I give you the prints. And he's getting stuff. Well, I don't know nothing about that. We're just told to take your prints, and that's what we plan on doing. Well, yeah, but the law, the law, I giggle when I say the law, states that you don't take prints on summary charges. Like, don't you guys know the law? And it's not law. It's nonsense. Well, we don't know nothing about that. We don't care. We just told to take your prints, and that's what we plan on doing. Well, why don't you just get on the horn and call somebody and tell somebody to come down here or make a determination whether or not it's indictable or summary, and then we'll have that all cleared up. If it's summary, I'm out of here because I don't have to give you the prints. And if it's indictable, I'll give you the prints. Okay? I'm not trying to give you a hard time. But you drag my ass in here saying that I broke the law. And we need to figure out if it's in the law or not. I got a phone ringing here. Hopefully somebody picks it up. So what they did was the chief ended up coming down. He didn't know. And so they threw Michael in a cell. Then they told him they were going to take him to court the next day for a bail hearing. Well, that didn't happen. They woke him up at 6 o'clock in the morning and dragged him out forcibly, and 2 or 3 of them forced him to give his fingerprints and then threw him out the door. What happened to the court? What happened to the bail hearing? I'll tell you what happened to the bail hearing. The court's saying, do whatever you want to do down there, but do not bring him to this court. Don't bring him here. We got enough trouble. But see, moral men and women could have sat down and settled this out so easy, so fast, and make your head spin. But here you have a moral man going up against a bunch of amoral idiots, foisting their amoral law. And that's where we run into trouble. You can't discuss anything with a cop because they're not smart, 1. And 2, they're in the place of the amoral, in the place of the psychopath. Now, how does a moral man or woman discuss anything with a psychopath? You might as well call it, hey, Ted Bundy, you want to go get a coffee? Because that's what we're dealing with. Because that's what the laws of your state or province or federation are all. They're all amoral. Rules and regulations, policies, statutes given the color and force of law, which tells you right there it's not law. So now we have the law societies who are completely amoral, churning out all this legalese, which is amoral, of which the legislatures make the rules and regulations, and the lawyers that came from the law societies are the ones that are in the Attorney General's office writing the legalese for these policies. So you can be absolutely sure there is no moral compass in any of this stuff. None. And until we get some moral fiber, some moral compass back into our legislatures, this is just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. Now, if I can find this, oh, by the way, By the way, if you're not aware of this, I saw a thing go by today, which said that the month of September, was the hottest September by a long shot of any September in history. Now, this is going to also just keep getting ramped up as we move to the Paris deal. When is that? In December, I guess? As they ramp it up, where them amoral boneheads are going to get together and try to put the final noose around our necks as far as environment is concerned. I mean, it's ludicrous, right? The hottest September in history, and by a long shot. Just not the hottest, way hot, which is more than I can basically stomach. But that's what they do. So, anyways, if you're a moral man or woman, then behave as a moral man and woman, but understand you're living in an amoral world, because it's the amoral world, which is the corporate world, which is your government, which is causing all the problem here on the planet. Don't forget we're Canadian. You can't be Canadian. It's an impossibility to be a Canadian. Somebody just put this in the chat. You can't be a Canadian, okay? Your corporate entity, your registered entity is Canadian. But the reason I know that your corporate entity didn't put that in the chat, the corporate entity can't type. Okay, so I know it was a flesh and blood that typed that. But that flesh and blood can't be a Canadian. Okay, and that's the other thing we got to wrap our brains around. Canada is a corporation, not a nation. The USA is a corporation, not a nation. Okay, America was supposed to be the nation. Okay, they just keep rebranding stuff on us. Okay, and it makes it difficult for people to wrap their heads around, because people are brought up from the time they're small, with the rhetoric of their so-called countries, and that's drifted through your head from the time you're born. And of course, people just believe what they're told. I mean, why would the government lie to me? Well, you can't be a politician unless you're a liar. It's an impossibility to be a politician if you're not a liar. You can't go there. There's no such thing as a moral politician. That's an impossibility. It's an impossibility to be a moral lawyer, because your job intrinsically requires you to be a liar. But yet we trust these people. That's why I say I think the people in the 1200s seemingly were a lot brighter than us. But then when I read books in that were written way back then, and even a lot farther back than then, I'm convinced that they were a lot brighter than we are today. But then they weren't subjected to the public school system. Okay? The idea way back when was that you learn to read, write, and do some math, and then you go and live your life. It wasn't until we got, the universities. The universities at the beginning and that were basically for the indoctrination of those who were the ruling class, the controllers. Then they decided they needed a bunch of useful idiots to implement the agendas that they contrived at these universities that were basically only there for the controllers, if you will, for the important people. And in there they contrive their plans, but now they need someone to bring their plans forward. So now they expand the education system so that everyone can go to university. All those universities are as indoctrination centers to bring up people, and it's no different than a hockey club or a baseball club or a basketball club. They got scouts in there looking for those that they can use to push their programs. The useful idiots who think that they're doing good when in fact they're doing the exact opposite, and they're too stupid to know what they're doing. But they're flattered and they're well paid, and they told they're great people and yada yada yada, and stroke the ego, and you can get an idiot to do just about anything for you when you get them there, right? So-and-so said I'm doing great work. I got the Rockefeller Fund money. Oh, this is wonderful, so you write the papers for them, and you push the propaganda for them, and you push through the programs for, never realizing that you're tying a noose around your own neck, your family's neck, and everybody else's neck. You think you're important. You're not important. You're freaking detrimental to the people. And then you become amoral because you're indoctrinated into that. There's no right, there's no wrong. Well, if there's no right and there's no wrong, we're in a lot of trouble. And even when I was a kid, I used to listen to older people, and they would, oh, well, we'll just let that slide in this. And I don't know why I see black and white. I guess it's because I see right and wrong. I guess it's because I'm a moral man. Well, there's a lot of gray area. Well, the gray area is the area that has caused us so much trouble. That's how come the kids are being taught the most ridiculous sex education in these absolute low grades in schools, and all that's doing is destroying the child. I mean, this isn't even something that is attached to a child's mind somehow. A child has no interest in it, but here you are teaching the children that maybe they're really not a little girl, little boy. This is at the earliest grades. This is where the gray area gets you. Okay? It's the destruction of the people. Because people, well, we should fight that, but what are you going to do? That's that whole gray area. If you don't understand what's right and what's wrong, then you're going to go to the gray area. And it's that gray area that's causing all the trouble. If people would learn to be able to just stand up and say no and mean it. And that's what they did out at the Bundy Ranch, and whether Bundy was on the right side or wrong side of anything, I don't know, and I don't care. The fact is that a bunch of moral people decided to stand their ground. And I don't care what anybody says, the moral men and women will always face down the amoral group, always. And that was a beautiful picture out there, because somebody's got to blink. You get in a standoff like that, somebody's got to blink. And if the moral man doesn't blink, somebody's backing down. And that's exactly what happened there. I've always said this for as long as I can remember. Somebody's going to blink. Don't let it be you. But also be smart enough to know that once the other party has blinked, you don't go and negotiate with them after that. The blink is a recognition of the loss. You know, and they will always try to get you back into negotiation. Well, okay, that didn't work out. Let's try this. No, just go away. So you can't. I don't think people can really understand how proud I was of the people. And these were the most normal people you're ever going to meet. I mean, these are just your average man, woman with their kids who want to drink raw milk instead of that pasteurized garbage. And then the government says they can't do it because there's a policy against it. And we will do whatever we want to you because the policy's amoral. And we're amoral. And we're just going to stomp on you forever. So, you know, most people would be intimidated, and they were when the first raids took place way back in 1998. But Michael's the kind of guy that knows right from wrong. He understands the moral position here. And over the years, the people that have been wanting the milk and that have come to realize that Michael hasn't done anything wrong. That Michael's standing the moral high ground. And now the people are standing the moral high ground. So when all of those police and that came in there, you know, feeling pretty tough in that, and telling people what they could and couldn't do and where to stand and yada, yada, yada as they loaded up the truck. Well, the moral men and women stepped forward and said, you know what? The answer is no, and we mean it. And you ain't leaving with nothing on that truck. Did they have guns? No. Did they need guns? No. They finally figured out how to say no and mean it. And that truck left empty. And those police, I mean, I'm sure they were totally irritated. I'm sure the inspectors were irritated because everybody's supposed to bow down to them. Make no mistake, moral always trumps amoral. Always. But people got to stand up and define and defend their moral rights. Then, and only then, can we begin to change this mess we call our society around. And if we fail to do that, then we have nothing to complain about. If we remain silent, then that is consent. And therefore, we have nothing to complain about. This can be fixed, and it doesn't have to be a shoot 'em up. That's what they want. Don't give it to them. It's the same as I was telling Michael. They shoved your wife on purpose. Okay? They shoved her on purpose, hoping like hell that you would take a swing at one of them. But you're smarter than that. He said, I know what they're up to. Okay? So that didn't work for them. Okay? Their job is to agitate in order to bring you into the amoral corporate court system. We're better than that. We're smarter than that. And I don't believe this hour's up already. Anyways, I want to thank everybody for listening. Those in the chat, as always. And,
they don't matter, genocide. Sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Seize the shit, force them back. Fuck them back, it's only for they bomb. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids. No one makes gun. Trees, lie to your face.